Raymond Shaw is the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life. I don't know how many of you will get that movie reference. It's a 60s movie starring Frank Sinatra, the Manchurian Candidate. And it's about a group of POWs that get brainwashed before they get released. And this Raymond Shaw character is not a good guy, but everybody that was been with him has been brainwashed to say this about him. And they'll just be going about their daily life. Everything's normal. Nothing seems wrong with them. But then when they get triggered, that's their response. And their faces will just kind of blank. And you can tell they're not thinking. They're just repeating what they've been trained to say. And this is what I feel like when speaking to almost all the Christians I talk to. They just repeat the same phrases over and over. And I've lived in 4 different states, and I've known people from many more than that. But wherever I am, and it doesn't matter what Christian I'm talking to, where they're from, it makes no difference. They say the exact same phrases. It's like that Manchurian Candidate. And it doesn't make any sense what they say. When you start talking to them about any sort of Christian theology, anything having to do with the Bible, they'll say these phrases, and then they'll repeat other phrases, and there'll be a conflict. It doesn't make any sense. It's this circular thing they've got going on, and there's no logic or reason behind it. For example, sin. Should Christians be sinning? And you don't get a yes or no answer to that. It's a yes or no question, but you don't get a yes or no answer. They'll say, "Oh, we all sin." That's what they say. And then if you try to pin them down on this and be like, this is a yes or no question. Should Christians be sinning, yes or no? And they'll say, no, Christians shouldn't be sinning. But then ask them to define what sin is, and then they kind of look put on the spot and a little bit confused, and they might have a little trouble thinking of how to answer that question, because nobody's ever told them how to answer that question, because sin doesn't really get talked much about in church. The preachers just want to give this positive, uplifting message, and they don't like talking about negative things like sin. They try to avoid those type of subjects, make you feel good about yourself. And so if they think about it for a little bit, then they'll come up with the commandments. Oh, well, breaking the commandments, that's what sin is. And that's correct. That is what sin is, breaking the commandments. But then they'll say, oh, but the law brings death. The law's done away with. Jesus took that law and nailed it to the cross. And these are the phrases that are very common. But if you think about it for a second, it doesn't make any sense. It's like you shouldn't be sinning. Sin is breaking the commandments, but the commandments are done away with. So there you're left with no good definition of sin. This is what I'm talking about. And they don't spend 2 minutes to think about this. It doesn't make any sense. If you do away with the law, there is no definition of sin. That's the problem. And they'll try to say that, well, Jesus did away with the law. He did not do away with the law. If he did away with the law, that would by definition make him a false prophet, which he is not. And he even specifically stated that the law and the prophets, they'll stand until heaven and earth pass away, till everything is fulfilled, till all is fulfilled. And let's say, oh, well, that was fulfilled when he died on the cross. Like, really? He went around for a few years preaching God's instructions, explaining God's instructions, teaching the commandments, living the commandments. And he's going to do that for like 3 years and then do away with it. Why did he bother preaching it in the first place? I mean, nothing makes any sense when you talk to them. And it's like, what is sin? Is it your emotion? That's what it seems like. That's what they don't really say this, but this is the impression that I get. Well, something that might be sin for you isn't sin for me. You know, that's a prideful way they'll go about saying it. Like, well, you know, celebrating Halloween or whatever might be a problem for you, so that'd be a sin for you. But me, I'm holier than that, so it's okay for me to, you know, dress up like the devil or do this demonic stuff. It's okay for me to do it, you know. Or they'll go off their emotions and it'll be like, well, I did something and I felt bad about it, so that must have been sin. But somebody else might do the exact same thing, not feel bad about it, and for them, it wasn't sin. You know, they're all over the place. There's no logic, there's no reasoning, there's no using your head. And that should be such a basic thing. There are so many commandments about sin in the New Testament. I'll give a partial list, and it'll probably be huge. But just look at how many times it gets talked about how it leads to destruction. You won't inherit the kingdom. We're not supposed to be sinning. Oh, we all fall short. There's another phrase. Okay, we have all fallen short, but that doesn't mean that it's an excuse to just continue doing it. We should all be working towards not sinning. And I'm not trying to bash Christians. I'm trying to point out that you're being taught all this stuff and you're not thinking about it. It's like you're immersed in it, and so you can't see the forest for the trees. You need to start thinking about it, start reading the scriptures, thinking about it, asking questions. Just ask your preacher to define sin for you. See what he says. Is it following the commandments? And it's, but the law brings death. The commandments are done away with. You know, ask him. See what he says. And he's going to talk in circles. Because that's what Christians do, because that's how they've been taught. Anyway, I just want to get across that you need to read the scriptures, and you need to pray about them, and you need to think about them and really consider them and compare them with everything you've been taught. Because you don't even get taught the commandments in church. Everybody I talk to has been in church for decades. They don't even know the 10 Commandments. Because that stuff doesn't get taught in church. What are you doing in church if it's not that? If it's not learning God's instructions? Why are you there?